In a healthy democracy, the rules are simple. Voters choose their politicians. We go to the ballot box, cast our vote, and the person with the most support wins. It is the bedrock of representative government. But what if I told you that in the United States, this process is often reversed? Welcome to the world of gerrymandering. This is a system where instead of voters choosing their politicians, politicians choose their voters. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it is a standard political practice. Every 10 years, lines are drawn on a map that determine the political fate of millions before a single vote is cast. These lines can secure power for a party that received fewer votes, silence minority communities, and protect incumbents from ever facing a real challenge. In this series, we are going to expose the tricks, the math, and the history behind the most legal form of election rigging in America. To understand the cheat, you must first understand the rules. The entire process hinges on the U.S. Census. Mandated by Article 1 of the Constitution, the federal government counts every person in the country every 10 years. This isn't just for statistics, it's for power. First comes reapportionment. The 435 seats in the House of Representatives are divided amongst the 50 states based on these new population counts. States that grow gain seats. States that shrink lose them. But the real action happens next. Redistricting. This is the internal process. Within each state, the district maps must be redrawn to ensure every district has roughly the same population. This sounds fair, but how you draw those lines, where you zig and where you zag, is entirely up to the state legislature. This is the moment where gerrymandering happens. It is the dark art of drawing lines to favor one side over the other. The practice is as old as the Republic itself. It gets its strange name from a founding father, Elbridge Gerry. In 1812, Gerry was the governor of Massachusetts. He signed a redistricting bill that blatantly favored his own party. The map was so contorted, so twisted to capture specific voters, that one district looked bizarrely organic. A newspaper cartoonist looked at this shape, curved around the Boston area, and added wings, claws, and a head. He said it looked like a salamander. Combining the governor's name with the animal, he dubbed it the Gerrymander. The name stuck. For over 2 centuries, that cartoon monster has been the mascot of political manipulation. Governor Gerry lost his job eventually, but he left behind a legacy that politicians from both parties have perfected ever since. Gerrymandering isn't just about drawing funny shapes, it's about math. Specifically, it's about the efficiency gap. The goal of a gerrymander is to maximize wasted votes for your opponent. What is a wasted vote? In political science terms, it is any vote that didn't help a candidate win. This includes 2 types: every vote cast for a losing candidate and every vote cast for a winning candidate beyond the 50% plus 1 needed to win. If you win a district with 90% of the vote, that is bad strategy. It means 39% of those votes were surplus. They were wasted. They didn't change the outcome. A smart gerrymanderer wants their opponent to win huge landslides in a few districts, wasting thousands of votes, while their own party wins many districts by narrow, efficient margins. There are 2 main techniques to achieve this mathematical advantage. The first is called packing. Imagine you are a Republican mapmaker facing a state with a lot of Democrats. You can't make them disappear. So, what do? You herd them. You draw the lines to concentrate the opposing party's voters into as few districts as possible. You pack them in until that district is 80% or 90% Democratic. The result? The Democrats win that 1 seat comfortably. They might even celebrate the landslide, but it's a trap. By sacrificing that 1 seat, the mapmaker has cleared those voters out of the surrounding districts. This allows their own party to win all the neighboring seats with safe, comfortable margins. It is the strategy of containment. The second, and often more devastating technique, is called cracking. This is the opposite of packing. Instead of concentrating your opponents, you spread the opposing party's voters across many districts. Imagine a strong community of Green Party voters. If they stayed together, they could win a seat. But if you draw lines that slice right through their neighborhood, you can split them up. You put 40% of them in District A, 40% in District B, and so on. In every single district, they remain a minority. They never reach the 51% needed to win. The opposing party wins every single seat by margins of 55% to 45%. Their political voice is effectively silenced, not by losing the argument, but by losing the map. Sometimes, gerrymandering gets personal. This technique is known as kidnapping. This happens when mapmakers redraw the boundaries to target a specific politician they want to remove. They might redraw the lines to move a politician's home into a new district where they don't have name recognition. Or, even more ruthlessly, they will force two incumbents into the same district. Imagine two popular representatives from the same party who have served for years. Suddenly, the map changes and they live in the same district. They are forced to run against each other in a primary election. It guarantees elimination. One of them must lose. It's a way to sniper shot specific rivals and remove experienced leaders from office without the general public ever voting them out. Let's look at a concrete example of how powerful this math is. It allows a minority of voters to win a majority of seats. Imagine a state with 50 voters. 20 are blue, 40%, and 30 are red, 60%. In a fair system, red should dominate. If we draw fair lines, red wins 3 districts and blue wins 2. That represents the population accurately. But look what happens with a gerrymandered map. If the blue party draws the lines, they can use cracking and packing. They can pack red voters into 2 super districts and crack the rest. Suddenly, with the exact same voters, blue wins 3 districts and red only wins 2. The minority party has just stolen the legislature. It isn't magic, it's geometry. For much of American history, these tools were used for a specific, sinister purpose: racial gerrymandering. In the American South, white politicians historically used cracking to slice up black communities. By dividing black voters across multiple white majority districts, they ensured that African Americans could never elect a representative of their choice. It was a way to maintain segregation in the halls of power long after it was banned in public spaces. This changed with the 1965 Voting Rights Act. This landmark law made racial gerrymandering illegal across the United States. It gave the federal government the power to review maps and ensure minority votes weren't being diluted. It was a major victory, but it created a new complex puzzle for mapmakers. To comply with the Voting Rights Act, states began creating majority-minority districts. Mandated by Section 2 of the VRA, these are districts drawn specifically to ensure minority communities can elect representatives of their choice. It guarantees representation in Congress. But there is a double-edged nature to this solution. By packing African American or Latino voters into one district to ensure they win, you necessarily remove them from the surrounding districts. This phenomenon is called bleaching. The surrounding districts become whiter and often more conservative. So while you might get one guaranteed minority representative, the neighboring districts might shift from moderate to hardline conservative, potentially reducing the overall political power of the minority group's preferred party. The tension between race and redistricting came to a head in the 1990s with the case of Shaw versus Reno. North Carolina created District 12, a bizarrely shaped district. It didn't look like a community. It looked like a snake. It stretched for 160 miles, snaking along Interstate 85. In some places, the district was literally only as wide as the highway itself to connect pockets of African American voters. The Supreme Court stepped in. They ruled that while race could be a factor in drawing lines, it could not be the predominant factor without a compelling reason. They established a strict scrutiny standard. If a district looks bizarre and unexplainable on grounds other than race, it is unconstitutional. The Salamander had gone too far. While racial gerrymandering faces strict legal limits, partisan gerrymandering has historically lived in a legal gray area. This is when a party draws lines simply to crush the other party, not based on race, technically, but on political affiliation. And let's be clear, both parties participate. Democrats have aggressively gerrymandered states like Maryland and Illinois to lock out Republicans. Republicans have aggressively gerrymandered states like Texas and North Carolina to lock out Democrats. For decades, the courts didn't know what to do. Is it unfair? Yes. But is it unconstitutional for politicians to play politics? That remained an open question, leaving mapmakers free to push the boundaries further and further. In 2010, the game changed forever. Gerrymandering moved from an art to a science. The Republicans launched a strategy called RedMap, Redistricting Majority Project. They realized that if they won state legislatures in the 2010 census year, they could control the maps for the next decade. But it wasn't just strategy, it was technology. They used Geographic Information Systems, GIS, and big data. Before, mapmakers used Sharpies and best guesses. Now, they had algorithms. They knew exactly how you voted, what magazines you bought, and how likely you were to turn out. They could draw lines with surgical precision. They created maps that were durable, maps that could withstand wave elections and keep a minority in power for a decade. Reformers hoped the Supreme Court would finally ban partisan gerrymandering. In 2019, they got their answer in the case Rucho versus Common Cause. The court was looking at extreme maps from North Carolina, drawn by Republicans, and Maryland, drawn by Democrats. The evidence of rigging was undeniable, but the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that they could do nothing. They declared that partisan gerrymandering is a political question. This means it is beyond the reach of federal courts. They effectively washed their hands of the issue, saying it is up to Congress and state legislatures to fix it, the very people benefiting from the rigging. It was a green light for parties to push the limits even further. The most toxic result of gerrymandering isn't just who wins, it's how they act. It creates the safe seat problem. Today, most House seats are non-competitive in general elections. The district is drawn to be so red or so blue that the other party has zero chance. This means the politician doesn't fear the general election voters. They fear the primary. Their only threat comes from their own party, someone more extreme, running against them from the right or the left. This pushes politicians to the extremes. If you compromise, you get primaried for being too soft. The moderate center voice disappears entirely because there are no moderate districts left to elect them. This dynamic leads directly to polarization and gridlock. When every representative comes from a safe, extreme district, there is no incentive to compromise. In fact, crossing the aisle is seen as a betrayal by their base. Why work with the other side if your voters hate them and your seat is safe? This leads to legislative paralysis. It causes government shutdowns and an inability to address critical issues. The House of Representatives stops representing the national mood and becomes a collection of warring tribes, safe in their bunkers, refusing to negotiate. The ultimate victim of gerrymandering is trust. It leads to voter apathy. When a voter looks at a map and sees that their district has been carved up to ensure a specific outcome, they ask a reasonable question. Why bother voting? The map is rigged. If the outcome is predetermined by district lines before the campaign even starts, voters feel their vote doesn't count. This decreases turnout in general elections. It creates a cynical citizenry that believes the system is fixed against them, because in many ways, it is. Is there a way out? Yes. The most popular solution is independent redistricting commissions. The idea is simple. Take the pen away from the politicians. Instead of letting legislators draw their own lines, give the power to nonpartisan citizen panels or retired judges. It works. States like California, Arizona, and Michigan have implemented these commissions. They prioritize keeping communities together over protecting incumbents. The result is more competitive districts, fairer maps, and politicians who actually have to work for your vote. There is another, more futuristic solution: algorithmic redistricting. This is the mathematics over politics approach. We can now program computers to draw maps based on neutral criteria: compactness, keeping towns together, and respecting natural boundaries. A computer doesn't care if a district votes red or blue. It doesn't care where the incumbent lives. It just follows the rules. This approach eliminates human bias entirely. While some argue it lacks the human touch needed to understand communities, it offers a vision of a democracy run by objective fairness rather than political greed. Gerrymandering is often called the hidden problem of American politics, but its effects are visible everywhere, in the anger of our discourse, the gridlock of our Congress, and the cynicism of our voters. It distorts democracy. It separates representatives from the will of the people. The battle for fair maps continues, fought state by state. It is a struggle to ensure that we have a government of the people, not a government of the majority of the majority. The next time you see a strange, twisting shape on a political map, remember, that isn't just a line. It's a choice about whose voice matters.